Welcome to Keeping Up with Trends. This is Fedrazak, Senior Trading Strategist here at CMTrading. And today we are joined with your host, Sergio Davids.
Hey. So, we've spoken about how major banks are hitting record highs. We've also addressed why Nvidia is continuing to soar to new heights and even tackle Apple as the world's most valuable company. So today I thought we should continue with Q1 trends and this time focus on the gold price, why it's hitting record highs, the fact that we've got a huge election year with about 76 countries having elections, and to end things off, why Bitcoin is hitting all-time record highs too. So let's kick things off with the price of gold. What's happening there?
Inflation. But, it's kind of funny because gold ultimately should have hit new record highs already a year ago.
Yeah. Back when, about a year ago, US inflation was standing at 9%.
Right.
So,
So
like
the
you said, it
residual
should have hit. Yeah. But now it's back down to 4, I think even 3%. And yet gold's trading at what? 2,200.
Yeah, so it is a little bit sketchy why gold right now all of a sudden
Yeah.
going up. But I would anticipate a couple of things. Number one, I think when inflation was going higher, yes, there was a little bit of uncertainty in the market. However, and this is the key, we didn't know the full effects of it. Now that we're in it for about a year into it, we kind of like are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, or there's more light in the cave. So we're kind of like a little bit more sensitive to it in a certain sense.
Yeah. That's just it's fascinating for me. I mean, like we've previously mentioned, right? Gold is a good hedge against inflation. And while inflation is slowing, we're certainly not out of the woods yet. But like you pointed out, it should have spiked, about a year ago, but that wasn't the case, if at
No,
all. It was
not
only
at all.
literally in the last 3 months. So I might think that there's some other players involved. I mean, I know China's been buying quite a lot of gold, um, just in the past month. So that might have also sent the price increasing. But yeah, it's just such an interesting asset for me.
But I think it's more the geopolitical tensions, I think, than economic tensions, especially between the U.S. and China, U.S. and
Yeah.
Russia, and everything else that goes in between. So I think that those are the biggest concerns right now in the market space, and that's why gold is going higher.
Do you think we'll see it continuing to go high, or will there be a sell-off? I mean,
Well, this is
it's
the
if
thing
you look
about
at
new
it,
record
yeah,
highs.
yeah,
This is the thing about new record highs. When you hit new record highs, that's it. I mean, like, we don't know how much higher you can possibly go.
that's true. We don't have it's unprecedented. We don't have any data on this, but it's just, yeah. I mean, it was trading what, slightly above $2,000, back in beginning of the month, and now we're looking at what, it's the 28th at the time of recording, and it's just shy of 2,210. It's just, yeah, it's quite
So
a
once
leap.
I'm saying once it continues breaking out higher, which today it's doing that even
Yeah,
further. I'm saying once it makes new highs, like it's like new lows. There's no end in sight. It's an infinity and more.
that's cool. So, what advice do you have for anyone thinking of getting into gold or those who already have gold? What do you think is going to happen?
Just pay attention to it because it's a major player and it's not going anywhere. Not until we have some sort of I'm looking for some sort of settlement in the markets as to the geopolitical issues around the world, including Russia
Yep.
and Ukraine, the Middle East. There's lots of and you kind of touched on it earlier in the introduction to this podcast. There's a lot of elections happening this year, and it's going to
Oh
affect
yeah.
everyone.
Well, yeah, just on that, I mean, a good segue into this. We've got 76 countries, right? So it's more than half the world's population that are all set to go to the polls in 2024. We've already had, I'm putting in parentheses here, quote unquote, elections in Russia, where unsurprisingly, Vladimir Putin has won yet again in a majorly uncontested election. But, apart from that, South Africans also set to go to the polls where, long governing ANC might be at risk. In June, you've got the EU Parliament that's also set for an election. And I think all eyes will be on, of course, the US election, at the end of this year.
That's going to.
So I guess let's start with the big one, right? US elections. What are your thoughts, man?
So, well, I'm really scared. Every time I think about it, I shake up. Like, there's so many things that could go wrong, and they could both end up in jail. It just seems
Yeah, I
like the
think yeah,
Democrats.
it's so yeah, I think that's one of the um sort of underlying issues plaguing both um contenders for America's top well chief um chief position. I mean, yes, you've got Biden's undergoing two cases. There was an impeachment trial to be set, but I think that's now cancelled. So all eyes on his son. Whereas Donald Trump's facing what, 91 indictment charges. He lost his big case, which was for the fraud case in the US, where he's set to pay what, just under $500 million in a fine. Yeah, it's it's bizarre that this is the kind of thing that people will be focusing on. But if we could switch tracks, can you speak to their policies necessarily? Like what necessarily happened? Historically, if Democrats are in office, you're going to see more money floating into social services and infrastructure, right? Whereas when Republicans are in, they focus more on the economy and the military. Is that still the case?
Um, so yes and no. I mean, it is and it's not, because at a certain point, each one has to, consider everybody's points. Um, and this is the thing. It's not just Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. It's the Democrats versus the Republicans.
Yeah,
And they've been at
yeah,
odds with many, many essential things. Anywhere from things like the Medicaid that became the Obamacare,
yeah,
um, educational standards, immigration right now is a very big
yeah.
issue in
It's
the
a
United
hot topic.
States.
Yeah,
Social changes, the genders, all that
yeah.
white community kind of thing is also happening, and changing the spectrum in it. So, like, the United States is going through a really, I think, in a very big way, a testing time of
Yeah.
its true identity. Will it remain the Judeo-Christian values that it's had since its inception, or, is it going to, for once and for all,
I think,
change?
yeah. No, you're right. I think it's in a big transition phase currently, and I don't think the America that people think of in their heads is going to be the same place as it, well, currently is in the next 10 years. Major changes are coming and major changes are happening. But the thing is, it still remains, the world's biggest economy. And anything that happens in the US elections, as we saw the last time, is going to shake up, you know, the global economy. So, are we in for a rough ride as we head towards November?
Oh, I think so, for sure. Oh my goodness, for sure, for sure, for sure. I mean, the U.S. is just, you know, so many things could go, and it's going to be entertaining as well, and we're going to
Oh, yeah.
laugh at it and all that
you know,
stuff. But
I'm
it's
watching it with great interest.
but it's also it's also very scary, because
Yep,
we're talking about the country that is the leading country of the world,
yep,
in terms of giving us that ability to make a standard for the rest of the world. And I think that that's what it's all about. So
Yeah,
yeah, we'll see how that unfolds.
yeah. And I mean, like we said in the beginning, it's not just, the US. Russia just had its election. We've got India, a population of what is it, almost a billion plus people, you know, all heading to the polls, which is going to have quite a big effect on Asian trade. You've got Indonesia, it's got elections, got Mexico, and like I also said, South Africa. So yeah, South Africa's election. I mean, we've got the long governing ANC, which has been in power for just over 20 years. Its popularity has ebbed quite a bit, but hasn't gone completely away. I mean, they still hold about, I think last time I checked, about 48% of the vote, and that's going to drop, not significantly, but it will drop in the next election. So yeah, it's going to be a big year for Africa. All eyes on South Africa and where we're going.
Yeah. So it also for South Africa, it's a very defining moment. So it's I think it's internationally. It's like this liberal versus everything else
Conservative.
conservative, and we're going to see
Yeah.
how that actually plays out.
76 countries going to elections. That'll cause some volatility in the market, you know? I mean,
Yeah,
what
for
do you,
sure,
yeah?
for sure.
So moving on to something else that's been quite volatile is of course Bitcoin, right? And you know, I know you've got your reservations about cryptocurrency in a whole, and quite rightly so. I mean, it's not tied to any asset. There's not a lot of governance around it. But it's also just so fascinating to watch. I mean, we've seen Bitcoin go from record lows to, this year record highs in the space of what, 3 years? I mean, you're talking about an asset that was what, sub $15,000, not even a year ago, right? to above 70,000. It's
So
just, yeah,
all
yeah,
right. So I mean, this is another asset that really reflects the current situation,
yeah.
uh, especially with so much uncertainty in the markets. And Bitcoin is a good place where we can kind of manage that uncertainty.
Look, I mean, it's cryptocurrency in a whole. I wouldn't say it's gone completely mainstream, but it's a lot more acceptable than it was, you know, 5 years ago. I mean, we've got major banks that are using cryptocurrency, you know, as, well, you can trade with it for goods. I mean, there was a restaurant, what, in Saudi Arabia, where I think it was just a meme, but it's still going, where you pay using Bitcoin. You can buy your Teslas using Bitcoin. I mean, in South Africa, we have Luno, which has popped up as sort of a rival to Binance. Just in the past year or so, it's become really interesting to see how cryptocurrencies become mainstream. What are your thoughts?
Um, it's really hard to gauge with Bitcoin because I still don't see the practical application of it. Um, Not to say that it's not applicable. I just don't see the applicable. You know, you're not using it in restaurants. You're not using it as pay stubs. Not yet, at least.
Not yet.
I'm not saying that it won't be, but for right now, it's where it's at. So I have to take that into consideration. But with that said, it's definitely something that will play some future role in the financial industries.
So, we are going to need new legislation, around this. I mean, for example, I was trying to figure out how does one pay tax,
On
on
Bitcoin.
cryptocurrency. Well, not just Bitcoin, but just cryptocurrency in a whole. So I was looking this up, and even South Africa's own, well, SARS, the revenue service, they have some guidelines, but it basically comes down to if you're getting money from crypto and you're putting it in your salary, please declare it. That's it. We did the
So
two systems. I mean, it's literally centralized and decentralized, right? Those two systems, and they do not speak to one another. So, they cannot physically go and grab your crypto, for example. Whereas before, IRS or SARS could take that money and do an audit if they needed to. But they can't do that now. It's two completely different monetary systems. So I find that fascinating, and we're going to need some form of regulation around this.
that's the other problem, is that the companies that are actually doing the Bitcoin services, it's hard
Yeah.
to really regulate them.
Yeah.
It's not
I mean,
centralized.
what's your recourse in case something, happens? There's a lot of unscrupulous players, unfortunately,
So
in the
that
cryptocurrency space.
that's the argument. That's really the argument that I'm seeing by not investing in Bitcoin. I still don't see it. That's what I'm saying. To me, it's still
Yeah.
tulips.
Yeah, it's look, let's face it, it's been around for Bitcoin specifically has been around for 10 years. But right now it's still in the infancy of being, seeing global adoption. But I agree with you in that, what was it, end of 2023, all those major crypto scams started popping up. What's it, FTX, um, Sam Bankman-Fried getting arrested. Hell, even Binance's own CEO, was
Okay.
arrested in China
Right.
for unscrupulous activities. And yeah, it's still a wild, wild west of the trading world.
I still think so.
Yeah, I
Not
mean,
in a
it's
bad way.
yeah, yeah,
Not in a bad way. It's just a realistic, practical level.
yeah.
How is it taken off, and how is it actually, like you said, you can't ever um, really see exactly how much a person makes. What?
No, you wouldn't be able to.
So I'm
There's
saying, so
lots
that
of there's lots of dodgy ways to go about,
not
doing
that we're
this.
recommending that, of course, right?
No, not at all. But that they do exist, and I like the idea of a decentralized system mainly because I never understood the point of a banking system to begin with. They keep your money, and what? It doesn't grow interest. They can't offer you great rates on this. Every transaction has a fee, whereas crypto, there's barely minimal fees for converting and buying and selling. And the process of buying and selling and sending to someone else is very slick. However, I suppose there's a reason why we have these centralized systems, because there's protections in place. Something happens with your bank, you have recourse. There's an ombudsman, there's someone I can go to. I could go to, IRS. But with crypto, what can you do? Your money's
Right,
gone. That's it.
right.
You gotta, even though they always say that, the way crypto works, every transaction is tracked. Sure, but who's gonna do the legwork in getting your funds back? There's nobody. So scary, scary world we live in.
So I'm saying it's still a very um, I don't even know how to say it. It's a still very young
Yeah,
I don't, currency.
yeah, yeah. It is. I mean, we're still at the advent of, digital currencies. It's still in its infancy. Many countries like Nigeria and Kenya, you can set up whole businesses without having a physical bank account. You know, what is that company Yoko, for example? You set up a digital account and you do trade like that. We have in South Africa, I don't know if it's the same where you are, but there are store owners who are completely cashless. You
So you're
just
talking about
use
merchant
something like
lending.
SnapScan. Yeah, so like a company like SnapScan, for example, where you can have a digital bank account. Except in this case, SnapScan still requires you to, by law, to tie in with an actual bank account. but in other countries you don't have to do that. And the banks are very scared of this. They're not getting their cut.
Are you talking about merchant lending?
Yeah, but basically, no, you don't need a bank account. It's all digitally done. So, I mean, I remember when I traveled and um, I asked one of the store owners, like, how much does it cost you to have these? It's like a point of sale, device, right? Except he's
Mm-hmm.
using his cell phone for it. So I asked him how much does it cost him, and it costs him zero. Whereas if he had a business license, to do transactions, it would cost him at least maybe $250 a month to have this kind of bank functionality. So to go from $250 a month to zero, you can understand the appeal. And for me, all I'm doing is just, scanning a QR code or sending him, a code from my phone, and we do transactions that way, completely bypassing the banks.
That's
Interesting
interesting.
world we live in, eh?
Yeah, that is very interesting. I mean,
Interesting world. Banks are going to be very upset. Yeah.
Africa is going through its own
Yeah.
um, kind of metamorphosis when it comes to that.
Yeah. And online trading as well. I mean, we've seen millions take to online trading, especially from Africa. I mean, currently there's a bit of a boom in online trading in South Africa. It used to be, the realm of the big corporates or, business execs. And I think we're finally getting to that point where people can understand that anyone can trade. You need to do the work. You need to put in the discipline. You need to put in the time, but it can be done.
Cool.
So on that note, if anyone out there is listening and wanting to get into trade and wanting to get into trading and, either as, making some extra money or actually, giving this up, giving their day job up and actually becoming a trader full time, what advice do you have for them this year?
So the markets are going to be really crazy this year. I mean,
Yeah.
I just feel it's going to be a very exciting year because of what's happening with the geopolitical news around the world, and that's going to be something that's going to be unloading from day to day almost as news information comes out, especially surrounding the U.S. elections, and the resurgence of the markets, and how the Fed is going to treat the markets from really bouncing back so quickly.
That's interesting. Really interesting. And I think on that note, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much, Fred, for all your awesome advice and insights. And I will see you on the next one.
Thank you.